I was 12 years old when my entire worldview shattered. One minute, I was a healthy middle schooler going through the motions, school, family, athletics, church, the whole prescribed path. The next, I was lying in a hospital bed facing a really serious health scare that ultimately made me question everything I'd been told about my body, my faith, and who was actually in charge of my life. Almost overnight, I went from the compliant good girl to the family's black sheep. I started questioning the school system, the medical establishment, politics, organized religion, basically every authority figure in my life. It wasn't just teenage angst. It was the beginning of a spiritual awakening that would completely redefine my understanding of who I am. Buckle up because we have a lot to unravel today. And first, if you are new here, let me tell you a little bit about what this podcast is all about. Welcome to Lately with Lexi, where spirituality, storytelling, and strategy meet for people who are building meaningful lives and businesses without selling their soul. I'm Lexi, and by day, I help health and wellness brands grow. By night, I explore the inner work that makes that growth possible. This podcast is for you if you're navigating ambition and alignment, structure and intuition, growth and nervous system regulation. Now, here's what I believe. Every identity that you take on, who you are at work, how you show up in your relationships, all of these different roles that you play are all an opportunity to bring you closer to your true identity as an expression of God. The problem is we forget this. We get distracted, but our life experiences are designed to help us remember. And as long as we ask for guidance, expect it, and trust that the divine is always working through us. And that's exactly what I want to explore with you on the podcast today. This is the first episode of the podcast 2.0 era, formerly Through the Veil, now available on video. If you want to hang out with me in the middle of my home, you can watch along on YouTube, Spotify, or Substack. And today I'm going to get really honest with you about my kind of non-traditional life path. I'm going to share the spiritual awakening and entrepreneurial journey that led me here. I'll walk you through the yogic answer to the question, who am I? And also explore what it actually means to devote your life to the path of self-realization. I'm going to start by taking us back a little bit to when I was 12 years old, when a doctor I had never met before told me that I needed to start taking birth control pills. Not because I was sexually active, but because I had an ovarian cyst that was causing me to bleed so much, I know, TMI, sorry, that I had developed severe anemia and chronic fatigue. The solution was synthetic hormones. Instead of looking into what caused this in the first place, I was given a Band-Aid that unfortunately came with a plethora of really nasty side effects. I only took the pills because honestly, I didn't know at 12 years old that I had another choice. Within weeks, not even months, my body revolted. My hormones were wildly out of balance. And unfortunately, I didn't have that language or understanding at the time. I was fighting nausea daily. I had crippling mood swings. I gained 30 pounds practically overnight. I struggled with acne that made me really want to hide. And I had depression so bad that 4 days I could barely get out of bed. Now, my parents, they did what they thought was best. They encouraged me to be more active. So I did. I played regional tennis and volleyball, training most evenings and traveling most weekends for tournaments and matches. I was running on fumes. I ignored every signal that my body was trying to give me. Then fast forward 2 years, at 14, my spine practically gave out. I had 3 bulging discs. One was herniated, and there would be days where I could not get out of bed. I missed so much school that I was almost held back for 2 years. And that's really when this fear set in. Not just fear of pain, but fear that this was my life now. Broken, heavily medicated, trapped in a system that treated symptoms but never asked why. I became desperate for answers, and I started seeking them outside of the doctor's office. I stumbled across a lot of documentaries about the food system, conspiracy theories, holistic health, and ancient healing practices. I learned about Ayurveda, and if you're not familiar, Ayurveda is India's 5,000-year-old system of medicine, and I discovered that yogis believed all disease in the physical body first begins with dis-ease in the emotional and energetic bodies. I was living proof of this, and this was the only thing that started to make sense to me. One day in high school, I gathered the courage to ask my mom if she would drive me to a yoga class. And I remember, I'll never forget, she had tears just welling up in her eyes. You know, she asked me, "Is this satanic? Like, what is this yoga?" And I laughed, not to, dismiss her concern, but because I understood it. I had grown up in a world where anything outside of the church felt dangerous. I remember telling her, "I don't think it's satanic. Will you go with me? Will you drop me off?" And she did. She dropped me off. And the first class changed everything, not because I was able to twist myself into a pretzel or found instant enlightenment, but because for the first time in years, I felt my body as something other than broken. I was able to connect to my breath. I felt stillness for maybe the first time ever and started to experience ease within my mind and within my body. Over the next few years, I worked with a chiropractor and a yoga therapist really closely. I practiced weekly, sometimes cutting class early to take a yoga class with my favorite teacher. Yes, this was in high school. Got a lot of unhappy phone calls from the principal, but I digress. Ultimately, I developed a relationship with my body. I learned to listen to my intuition instead of ignore it. And slowly, naturally, my spine realigned. I avoided back surgery that surgeons told me was the only way. I got off all psychiatric medications that doctors told me I would need to be on for the rest of my life. And I didn't just heal, I was starting to wake up. By 18, I became a registered yoga teacher, not because I wanted to perfect poses, but because I wanted to help others find what I had found, a way out of a system that had failed me and into a practice that actually worked. In my early 20s, I became a certified holistic health coach. I started working with clients right away, and that's when I realized my spiritual awakening and my entrepreneurial journey, they weren't two separate paths. They were one of the same. I wasn't building a business out of ambition or strategy. I was building it out of necessity and out of passion, out of knowing that the conventional route, the pills, the band-aids, the push-through mentality, that wasn't the only way. And it certainly wasn't the best way, not for me. My way was through personal empowerment, and I wanted to inspire others to find their own way too, just like I had, because I knew that my awakening, it wasn't just for me, it was meant to be shared. That's what happens when you devote yourself to the path of a yogi and self-realization. You don't just transform your own life, but you become a guide for others who are walking the same road. But here's the thing. I couldn't guide anyone until I understood what I was actually guiding them toward. And that meant answering the philosophical question that's, I believe, at the heart of all yoga. And that question is, who am I? Now, philosophers and mystics have been asking this question for thousands of years. Yogis understood that the answer isn't found through intellect, but rather our lived experience. Through yoga, you can calm the body, regulate the breath, consciously direct your energy, still the mind, so that the answer to the question is both revealed and experienced. Yoga teaches us that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not even your personality. You are the soul, which is individualized consciousness, a spark of God. This is your true identity and the yogi's answer to the question, who am I? Paramahansa Yogananda taught that your true identity isn't one thing. It's four interconnected aspects. And once you start to understand and live by this, you're going to experience such a dramatic shift in your life. The first aspect is that you are the immortal soul, not the physical form that changes and dies. Most suffering comes from mistakenly identifying with the body or mind, whereas the soul is indestructible. It is not born when the body is born, and it is not lost when the body dies. Yogis understand that the body, it's almost like a coat that you wear. The yogic perspective is that the body is a temporary instrument and a biological vehicle that is governed by time, decay, and cause and effect. When this is experienced and not just believed, the fear of death starts to weaken. Pain is still felt, but it's no longer something that you will over-identify with. The second aspect of your true identity is pure consciousness, essentially the witness behind thoughts, emotions, and your ego. Yogis understand that our thoughts, emotions, and personality are just like objects, and the ego is just a function. It's not an identity. Our true identity is the witness to all of it. We can experience this gap through meditation, when our thoughts slow down, when the sense of I am thinking and that identification starts to dissolve. And then only awareness remains. This awareness is calm yet alert, and it doesn't judge. The yogi and teacher that I mentioned a lot, Yogananda, once said that when the mind is still, the soul knows itself. And I think that's so true. Our identity shifts from I am having an experience to I am the awareness in which experience happens. It's subtle, but it's a big shift. Now, the third aspect of your true identity is that you are a child of God. God in the yogic system is infinite consciousness, or the ever existing consciousness or bliss. To be made in God's image means that the soul has the same essence. Think of a spark to a fire or a wave to the ocean. You are not separate from God. You are an aspect of it. And finally, you are the individually expressed spirit, yet one with the infinite. You remain a unique expression with specific dharma or life's purpose in this specific lifetime, and you are a distinct flavor of consciousness, if you will. And at the same time, you are not separate from the infinite. You're not confined by the body, and you're not bound by ego identity. The path of self-realization is how we directly experience these four aspects of our true identity. So, knowing all of this, that you are the soul, the witness, a child of God, you're one with the infinite. What does it actually mean to live in that way, with that knowing? What does it mean to devote your life to this path, to the path of a yogi? So to answer that, we first have to define what self-realization actually is. And this definition comes directly from Yogananda and the Self-Realization Fellowship. And they say that self-realization is the knowing in mind, in body, and soul that you are one with the omnipresence of God. You cannot reach the infinite with the intellect alone, and that's why we have yoga. Yoga is not just yoga asana or physical poses. That's like one very small element of yoga, actually. Yoga is so much more. In its truest form, yoga is a psychophysical method for achieving conscious contact with divine presence. Yoga does not necessarily bring you to God. It removes the noise that hides God from your perception. And there's a stark difference between believing in God and experiencing God. So the experience of God is to have conscious contact with the divine. It's when you feel presence and you perceive more peace, more joy, more light. This contact, it may begin subtly as a sense of inner stillness, a feeling of being guided, or a quiet joy without cause. What yoga does is yoga helps us cultivate this God consciousness regardless of belief. Yoga helps to stabilize spiritual awakening and also protects our nervous system. Yogananda called yoga the scientific method of God realization. And I think a lot of yoga that we see today has lost this intention. I believe we can change that. This is the goal that I have personally for any class, workshop, or retreat that I lead. This is what it's all about. And when you integrate the intention of self realization through yoga, you'll notice less urgency to prove or perform, and also quicker recovery from stress. You'll develop a background sense of peace in your life. Your identity loosens from outcomes, and presence becomes a much more familiar state. So essentially, self realization is the permanent experiential knowledge of your true identity, pure consciousness, and union with the divine. If you'd like me to dive deeper into specific yoga practices and rituals aside from, physical yoga poses, let me know. I am happy to record an episode specifically on developing your own spiritual practice so that you can embody the teachings of self realization. I could nerd out on this topic all day long. Stevie loves it too, even though she's snoring right now. So I don't know if that's being picked up on the mic or not, but here we go. With that being said, I hope parts of my story resonate with you or help spark your own remembering of how your life experiences are guiding you closer to your true identity. In summary, the yogi's answer to the question, who am I, is that we are one with God. We know this to be true through practicing yoga and the application of self-realization, which together is the applied science of inner union with the divine. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to Lately with Lexi. If any of this resonated, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment or send me a message or email directly. Next week, we are diving into how I'm reclaiming creativity after years of shrinking myself. It is a vulnerable one, and I think you will love it. Make sure you subscribe on Substack to stay up to date on the podcast, my writings, and be the first to know about upcoming workshops and retreats. That being said, my next workshop is going to be in Sarasota, Florida for the spring equinox, the weekend of March 20th. You can also subscribe now on YouTube for the video version of this podcast. Listen and leave a review on Spotify or Apple Music. That really helps me get this podcast out to more people. So I'd appreciate the support. And if you want to explore working together, all of the links are in the show notes below. That's all I have for you guys. Have a great week.